There we go.
All good.
Having a bit of a tough technological issues. All right. Well, this is Leaf Talk. This is CFL Talk with David Morisuti and myself, Candid Frank Stanishi. And we're going to talk about Week 11 and see what happened then. And I guess we might as well start with the team that we cover. The Toronto Argonauts went to Edmonton. And they didn't have a very successful visit there. They looked good for a while, but then, as seems to be, when the Argos play well, they don't play well enough. It seems too often.
Yeah, they're a team that unfortunately makes too many mistakes at different points in the game, and and unfortunately, it gets to the point where you keep counting the mistakes, and you can see why they're in the position that they're in. I talked to Ryan Dinwiddie yesterday. I said, it must be frustrating with these close games. Like, do you see, areas you feel like you can, make those slight improvements to get over the hump? And he says, well, it starts with, can we get our offense more opportunities, right? And when we get those opportunities, we have to convert, the red zone. They didn't execute in the red zone. That took, he said, almost 8 points off the board for his team. Guess how many points they lost by?
8.
Right? And you got a few, another defensive stop, maybe 2 in that time. And you're talking about maybe a victory instead of a loss.
Simply put, there are the problem with the Argos right now. It isn't one facet of their game that's hurting them. It's multiple facets. They don't have the kind of I'll say the running game. Number one, the biggest problem they have, David, is they can't run the ball.
No.
Without doing that, and when you think about it, you're stuck passing and you can get a lot of yards, but without running the ball, when you get deeper into the other team, the red zone, you need a running game in the red zone. Stop, Frank. It's that simple. Full stop. You need a running game inside the red zone.
Yeah, you need to be able to pick up the tough yards. You need to be able to have a full arsenal. And what happened here is, teams tell the Argos, throw it. We dare you to throw it in the end zone because you're not going to run it. We know you're not going to run it. And if you do try to run it, we don't think you're going to be able to get it in. Right? It's a bit of a predictable offense, right? We've known that for the longest time, but now it's become more apparent just how much more this offense has become a one-dimensional offense.
Yeah, 2 years ago, the defense and the special teams were really the main assets, with the offense not a distant third, but third best of the groups, right? And then last year, the defense started not to be as effective, but then all of a sudden the Grey Cup came, and they played probably their best football game in the Grey Cup.
Well, that's it, right? You can have these moments where maybe your offense isn't playing at its best, but then the defense picks it up. But you look at that Grey Cup. Every they executed plays on offense, they executed a lot of plays on defense, and even special teams. They got that fumble early in the game that provides them with an early score. Just little things like that. Like, those are things you have to start executing. You can get turnovers, but it's how you follow up on the turnover. You have to execute when you get those turnovers, and that's something the Argos were always able to do, but now they haven't been able to do that. And that's the part that has to certainly be frustrating for this coaching staff, because they feel, they have players that are good enough and that are leading the charge, but it's not hasn't been enough.
Yeah. I think I can reflect on, and I think we can drill down Ryan Dinwiddie's comments, where they have to give the offense a chance. And essentially, what he's saying is that the offense can churn up a lot of yards because they're starting from deep in their end. The important thing for a defense to do is to give the offense some serious opportunities, where they get good field position. And the same is true for special teams. And they're not getting it this year at the consistent kind of rate that they got it last year from both those specialties.
Yeah, I mean, look, their special teams has been, I always say that everyone says, "Oh, but they have a good returner." The returner is only one part of it, right? He's only one part of special teams. You've got guys who create the lanes for him to block, right? Guys who prevent the opposing teams from getting to the returner when he catches the ball, right? There's so much more to it than just this returner's having a down year. Now, Janari Grant hasn't exactly had a stellar year, I would say, by his standards, but I could tell that there's frustration on his part because he knows I missed the chance for a big one there, or we didn't get the block in the right spot and they got to me, right?
Yeah, well, if you have to be perfect, this is something that what happens when you have the phases of the game aren't executing well or aren't getting success. It puts more pressure on the other. And in this case, the special teams and defense is putting a lot of pressure on the offense, which is using up a lot of energy to march up and down the field, make a lot of great passes. But when the offense gets in close, like I said, they don't have a running game. And then therefore, the defense of the opposition knows all they have to do is flood the pass zone because they're not going to run the ball, or they're not going to run the ball with any kind of success. And that makes it hard when the playbook starts to shrink. When the playbook's wide open, Arbuckle and the Argo offense does a great job. But when it shrinks, and that means no run game, it shrinks. That's a lot of the offense when you're in the red zone is subtracted when you don't have a running game.
Yeah. Now, I know that they were hoping to have Mayan Williams coming back, but if I remember correctly, he wasn't at practice on Wednesday. So kind of a mixed bag there. I think he's at the point where he would have been eligible to return, but that injury seems to really have taken a bite out of him. It's a tough injury that he's going through, but it doesn't get any better because now they're going to be without their top receiver in DeMonte Coxey. I wasn't at practice, obviously, today, but essentially, if he wasn't going to be on the field on Thursday, there's no chance he's playing on Saturday. And so,
what about Winton?
Winton's going to play. He was a full go at practice on Wednesday, and you could tell he's got stuff taped up. He's fighting through. I give Win McManus a lot of credit because some veterans, if at this point in the year they would just be like, you know what, I'm hurt, team's not doing well, like I'm not going to risk further injury. But that hasn't been the case for him. He continues to take the beating that he's taking, and I give him a lot of credit for being willing to do that.
Yeah, he's well, they need him. They need their defense. They need their DBs to make some plays. One of the trademarks of every team that the coaches put in, the head coaches put in, Ryan Dinwiddie, every team he's had has had big guy plays from the defense, the offense, and special teams. He's had big plays from them alternately. And that's what's led to most of the success the Argos have had. What they need, and I guess, when you talked about the running game, it puts a lot of pressure on you when you need a good return, as opposed to get a good return. And so what we have here is we have a team, the Argo team, that is finding it hard, to win. They're finding it hard, and they're pressing a little bit. So I don't know if they can find a way to win a game. And this is going to be tough this week against BC. BC's a really good team, and it's going to be a challenge. But the Argos need to win a game. They need to win, not necessarily in a walk, but in one that every department feels good about their game. It won't help if it's just one side carries the ball. They need to play like a team. That's the one thing they've been, unable to do. No one's saying they're not trying. And I don't think, and we talked on Griff's show about, we don't think it's the coaching. We don't think it's the plan. We just don't think the guys are able to execute.
Well, that's the other thing too, right? Is you get a really good offensive performance and the defense wasn't there. Or you get a really good offensive and defensive performance, but the special teams isn't there. They've been plagued by too many inconsistencies on all three phases. And unfortunately, like as I said, there's only so much your team's gonna be able to do when not all phases are, coming together the way that they need to be.
Yeah, the solution's very simple, David. Let's talk about Ottawa and Winnipeg. Winnipeg squeaked one out. Ottawa looked really good against Toronto, at least in the second half of the game. They looked really good against Winnipeg. They were just they got caught by a couple of mistakes, and the malaise that has bothered them throughout the season kind of reappeared a little bit.
It just seems to me that when Ottawa needs to make that play or they need to close things out, because they could have easily have taken that game to overtime or maybe even potentially win it. You get that big return, right? And you think to yourself, just got to make sure you don't give Winnipeg a chance to win it. Then they get the interception. I'm like, oh, Winnipeg's gonna blow this. Look at this. What's the follow-up? A 2-and-out. And a 2-and-out deep in their end that leads to the game-winning field goal. Like to me, that as soon as they couldn't get that when they got that 2-and-out, when Winnipeg got that 2, and I said this game's over. You don't give Winnipeg that many cracks at winning a football game. It's
and
just
their
not.
kicker.
Exactly. Yeah, the kicker missed, but he ain't gonna miss that many times.
Yeah, that was he missed his share for that game, and it was like you said, because they turned the ball over so deep in their end zone and their end that that basically they made it a pretty much an automatic field goal, which too bad for Ottawa. Winnipeg is having an interesting season. They're going to be the hometown for the Grey Cup, and I can see that they're going to make. I'm convinced they're going to make some interesting moves when the season starts progressing. Maybe around Labor Day, they're going to make some moves, and I think they're going to. What happens every year, it seems, with every team that hosts the Grey Cup, they all go over the cap, and you can't blame them because they want a chance to win at home. Who doesn't want to win at home?
Well, that's it too, right? Like there's a lot for Winnipeg to play for. They've got BC right behind them. Edmonton's got a couple wins under their belt, so they really don't have a big margin for error if they really want to go to the Grey Cup this year. And Ottawa, Ottawa too, like there's an opportunity for Ottawa. Like second place in the East is not solidified. And if they have won this game, 4-5 looks a lot better than 3-6, doesn't it, Frank?
Oh, absolutely, especially when the team ahead of you is only a game ahead of you. So this is and that team is struggling right now. That team being, of course, Montreal. They played BC and they looked like a team that lost 36-18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly, right. And so that's kind of where I feel like they need to go on this. Is Ottawa needs to find a way to not let these losses pile up. They got to find a way to put together 2, 3, 4 wins in a row. They haven't really done that, and that. So we'll see if they're able to figure that out.
It's been the problem with them, it's been the problem with them, unfortunately. As far as the way the season is going, it's looking very, very heavy west. Saskatchewan didn't play this week, but sorry, they did. They beat Hamilton. Hamilton went right over them. Saskatchewan really looked good defensively, and Hamilton didn't look like the offensive threat. Bo Levi Mitchell didn't look like the quarterback that was gaining the kind of yardage he's been gaining.
No, this is the first time I had seen Bo Levi Mitchell under pressure. under pressure the whole like right from the start. How many sacks? How many sacks did they get? 6 sacks? I don't think I've ever. I think that's the most they've allowed all season long. Right?
Yep.
So, you know, I do think that there's something to be said about not being able to, you know, when the pressure's up, right? And I've said this, does Hamilton have enough to win a game like this? This was not a good proof. Now, I understand Hamilton had some injuries, but guess what? So does Saskatchewan. I don't like using the injury excuse.
Well, this was an opportunity to make a statement, right? Saskatchewan, both teams have a statement to make. Saskatchewan's been clearly a better team for a few years now, a really good team for a few years. They haven't been able to complete, the run to the Grey Cup, right? Haven't been able to make it to the Grey Cup. Hamilton is a newly found threat in the league, and they needed this victory to tell the rest of the league, we are here. Look who we beat. And it didn't work out that way. And that's something that set Hamilton back a step. Not to say that they can't pick it up again, but they're definitely, as far as this game's concerned, not as good a team as Saskatchewan, which basically says Saskatchewan has the inside track on the Grey Cup, in my opinion, at this point, where Montreal could have made a point of it, right? So, but Montreal still can be, Montreal and Hamilton could still, either of them could make it to the Grey Cup right now, the way things are right now. Ottawa needs to improve. Toronto, what do I have to say to point out for them to make the Grey Cup? That's right now they're in a rebuild mode. One of these on the fly rebuild modes is what I think they're in.
Yeah, no, I think you look at it as no touchdowns, 2 interceptions for Levi Mitchell. The running game, they are actually getting some stuff down on the running game. I felt like maybe that should have been the area that, like, when you're struggling to protect the quarterback, what do you start doing? Run the football, because then that takes away the ability to rush the quarterback. They should have done more of that. They didn't. Kenny Lawler had some plays. He made some plays, but there are a lot of other guys that just couldn't get it done. Keandre Smith, he had nothing going for him. Tim White, he had nothing going for him. Like, they essentially, yeah, Kenny Lawler had some plays, but that was not the Kenny Lawler experience we had been seeing to start this season. And yeah, I think if you are Saskatchewan, you're impressed by it. You're impressed by the fact that you've got a wealth of talent on this offense. Like we talked about with Griff, Tommy Neild, right? Coming in, right? Former Argo seems to really found a good way to contribute offensively. AJ Willett went over 100 yards combined again. There's the thing is Saskatchewan has really found a good way to have a depth of talent on that offense.
Absolutely. They have, and they've done it, of course. They've got a very experienced quarterback. I mean, comparable to Levi Mitchell. Now, Harris hasn't had the level of success Levi Mitchell has had,
right?
But Harris is a pretty good quarterback, one of the best over the past 10 years. And I think he's been very close, not just on the sidelines with Ottawa and winning a Grey Cup, but also, he's done it in Toronto. And I think he's a quarterback that could win a Grey Cup now. He's really become a monster when it comes to his patience and his ability to be so accurate. He's such an accurate passer. And when you have options like Saskatchewan has in receiving, keep in mind, they lost some guys and then they find some other guys like Neild. Neild wasn't a guy that was in the plans. So, this is the next man up mentality that is working for Saskatchewan, as far as receivers are concerned. So that's a good thing for them. Hamilton, it's just one loss. It's not the, they're at 6-4 now. That's not a bad record in the East. So I don't think that's something to worry about. They're a game ahead of Montreal, and Montreal is a game ahead of Ottawa. So it is something that there is a tightness there. There is a need to be successful, and the Argos in that Eastern Division, they have to win some games. They just have to win some games. I like Hamilton, I like Montreal, and I can like Ottawa by what's going on here. So it's going to be an uphill battle in the East Division for Toronto.
It is, but I look at this and I say Montreal is about to play their fourth quarterback this year.
Yep.
Ottawa, they win a game, they lose a game. They're really struggling to put together wins. Toronto, like if Toronto wins, right? Now it's easier said than done considering the opponent that they have. But Ottawa's going up against an Edmonton team that's had back-to-back wins. We know Montreal is about to play their fourth string quarterback against the Blue Bombers. Like if you're Toronto, right now you'll need help, but a victory against BC I think would go a long way in maybe potentially changing the course of the season because you beat BC. Your next game against Hamilton, right? Division opponent. Like there's again, I'm trying to act like the optimist right now. I'm not saying it's over, but if Toronto can get its act together, there's an opportunity. The problem is the next two games are against two teams that are played a lot better than them this year. So they have to really up their game. They have to take their game to another level if they want to find a way to get back into this. And it hasn't happened yet. So I can understand the pessimism of whether they can actually do it.
Absolutely. And as far as pessimists go, this is the kind of season where pessimists would be very busy because none of the teams in the Eastern Division, especially after this week, have a lock on anything. Honestly, they don't have a lock in it. Hamilton has the tightest lock, but it isn't a full lock. In the Western Division, Saskatchewan's the only team that's been consistently good through the season. So there's a lot of pessimism available to every fan base, which means every fan base is still in on it, including the Argos and of course the Edmonton Elks. They as well, they beat Toronto and they're a team that like you talk about Ottawa, they're in the same position as Ottawa. If they can put a string of wins together, they could make it very interesting. And of course, the crossover can be in play.
Yeah, I do think I think I'm like 90% confident we're going to see the crossover this year. Like BC is not a team that should miss the playoffs. Winnipeg's not right now. Winnipeg's not a team that should miss the playoffs either. They haven't been great, but they're not as bad as the teams that are below them, right? It makes some people have asked me, does this make you think maybe the divisions should be realigned? Not like changing, not realigning the divisions, but like changing how the playoff format is.
Well, there's always the only way that'll change, David, is if they get rid of the East-West division and they just line all the teams up.
Yeah, and you give the top two teams the bye. No, 1 and 2 get the bye, but then the rest of the league is seeded differently. Like it's a 9-team league. You can play your games within your division if you have to. I get that, like regionally, but like I would hate to see BC miss. Like you see these like even Edmonton to a degree seems more like a playoff team than some of these East teams.
Yeah, you're talking about Ottawa and Toronto. I mean, I could draw a line directly from Ottawa to Edmonton and say same problem. Yeah. Both of them. The difference being Ottawa's had a problem at quarterback, but it's been kind of resolved. Edmonton had a problem at quarterback. It's been resolved. I like Edmonton. I like Edmonton and Edmonton's situation far better than I like Ottawa's. If Ottawa's quarterback can't be healthy, I don't like their backup. I don't think their backup's going to do anything spectacular. We've seen it already. But when it comes to, Edmonton, you've got a guy that's a Grey Cup MVP under center there.
Yeah. No, I do think that these next 3 weeks, I think are going to say a lot about the playoff picture. I think some teams will ascend and kind of solidify themselves, or we're going to get more chaos between now and the end of the year.
Well, chaos isn't a bad thing if you're a football fan. If you're a fan of sports, chaos can be fun.
It can be very fun.
It can be fun if you're not on the wrong side. There's not a wrong side to be on when it comes to the chaos. Like if the chaos is that your team can't find a way to win, that kind of chaos, you don't want to be that in a fan base. The kind of chaos created by the absence of a quarterback with no substitute in sight, you don't want to be a part of that chaos. But the chaos where your team, if you're an Argo fan, you can say, well, they're close. If you're an Ottawa fan, we beat the Argos. If you're Edmonton, wow, our backup quarterback is doing better than our starter. So there's chaos, but there's also hope intertwined in it. And I like the chaos, and I like the teams that are coming out of the chaos in a positive way. The Argos just have to come out of their chaos. They just have to figure out. It's funny, but the irony of irony is this is the exhibition game in Toronto with BC coming in, a team that Toronto has beaten in the last 4 or 5 years at home. And it's going to be in the middle of a carnival atmosphere. They need kind of a carnival game to win the game. It should be, well, we'll see how interesting it is without their number one receiver and a less than healthy middle linebacker that runs their defense. David, it's going to be an interesting game. And as far as the other teams that are playing this week, Winnipeg and Montreal, two teams, don't you think, in the same kind of situation where they're really good teams that are stumbling a little bit?
Well, two teams you expect to be in the championship picture, and they don't look like championship teams at times. Like Montreal, their issues, their quarterback. They've got injuries. They've been hit pretty hard with injuries. Same as Winnipeg. Winnipeg has dealt with. They haven't had their top receiver, in Dalton Schoen. So Nick Dembski's stepped up in a big way, and that's where I think Winnipeg I have more belief in because they've got guys that can step up their game. Brady Oliveira seems to be getting himself back on track. Zach Claros looks a bit better. He's finding guys that could be weapons for him, but he's still making those mistakes that makes me concerned about how far he can get them. But I do look at these two teams, and they're in very similar situations where we think they're good. They've had good games, and then they've had bad games. And I'm trying to gauge where they are exactly, and it hasn't been easy.
That's the whole thing this year. I mean, the only team that's been easy to gauge is Saskatchewan, and close to that is Hamilton. But this last game raised some questions. Are they ready for prime time is the big question, right? So that's that. And we talked about Edmonton and Ottawa separately. Well, this week they're going to play against each other, David, and we're going to find out what's really going on between these two teams. This is as important. This game has playoff implications.
Both sides, for sure.
Right?
Like Winnipeg wants to stay in that 3-hole. They don't want to drop to the crossover because Frank, you and I have talked about the crossover hasn't led to a Grey Cup, right?
Right.
In Montreal, they want to stay in second because they also want to host a playoff game because, technically first is not out of the question for Montreal if Hamilton's not able to sustain their play. But I think Winnipeg's obviously in a better spot in terms of how they've played, but they've got a lot of competition around them, teams that are improving around them, and that only adds to what I think is a very complicated situation for them.
Yeah, Winnipeg's playing on the road. They've been pretty good on the road, but not as good as they are at home. Montreal's been very good at home, and they're going to have to lean on a good game for them at home. Edmonton's on the road in Ottawa. Ottawa had a great game against Toronto, followed up with a dud. Unfortunately, lost a game they could have won. And now at 3-7, as you said, it's not just them putting space between them and Toronto. They need to put space between them and Edmonton, right? And it's not just Edmonton, it's BC. They've got two Western teams that could very well both be ahead of them soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I just see this West picture is so fascinating because if Calgary can beat Saskatchewan, does that make people think twice about who's the best team in the West? Right?
Exactly.
It's so fascinating. The East is just like, is somebody going to play well enough to be 500 at the end of the year? And in the West, it's like, well, you got so many teams that are so good. Like BC in other seasons with the way they're playing, they're probably top 2 team in that West division with the way that they've played on offense. Defensively, not as great. But they're starting to get it together. They're starting to build to something, especially under a new head coach. It takes time for that to all come about. Not every team can get a new head coach and go and win right away. It takes time. But I feel like the West picture has been just so incredible. I do appreciate the fact that we're getting such a competitive division. It's just too bad the East isn't in that. One division has to suffer with one other division doing so well.
Yeah, well, it happens, and the hope is that that for every fan, their team takes advantage of an opportunity that has presented itself, and there is there is not a team in the CFL right now that can be predictably not to make the playoffs. They all still have a shot, simply because of the opposition hasn't been that good. So they've got a shot. Everybody's got a shot, from the Argos, Edmonton, Ottawa, BC. That's going to be that foursome is going to be interesting, because as it stands right now, they're all fighting for a playoff spot, and only one of them, the only one that has it right now, is BC.
Yeah, no, and BC, I've liked BC the last few weeks offensively, but again, they're still making mistakes. There's like, if you're scoring a lot of points, you should be winning. But if you're scoring a lot of points and losing, that means your defense hasn't stepped up enough either.
Yeah. So true, so true. Well, you know what? BC and Toronto, just like Edmonton and Ottawa, the Eastern team has to win if they want to put those other 2 teams, put some distance behind them, because that's who they're fighting for in a playoff spot. It's less about Montreal and Ottawa. It's more about BC and Edmonton. You talked about Saskatchewan and Calgary. Now Saskatchewan is the team for me that has really proven that their head coach has it figured out. Even though he's a defensive expert, their offense has been really good, and they've always had really good receivers there, David. But right now, it's the discipline that the team's playing with. This is a team that a short couple of years ago were taking really poor penalties.
Mm-hmm. You're making poor decisions in crunch time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
How many times they say, they could have won the game here, or, they're going to regret this loss. Like, there was a lot of that. And I think eventually they've started to figure out, but they and that's part of it. I mean, let's also not forget that there's also a bit of a growing pattern here too. They've got veterans on this team. They've got a head coach that's in his second year as a head coach, right? So there is, I think when you look at Saskatchewan, they've built up a really good depth. They built up some good depth. They had a lot of guys on the offensive line out. Coaching deserves a lot of credit, but I'll give Jeremy O'Day credit too for the roster that he has put together. Now, Frank, we have seen Saskatchewan play well in the regular season, but then in the crunch time when the games get tougher, can they win? And can they win when it's a winner take all? Because we've seen now Calgary's beaten them pretty good. This game on Saturday is Saskatchewan's ability to show we're not an easy out. We're not going to be that team that crumbles when the pressure is on them.
That we can play well back to back to back. That we can be consistent throughout the week. We can dominate the opposition, no matter who it is, when it is. That's where they're at right now. They're at the point where they have an opportunity to establish their dominance, and we've seen that throughout the CFL. We've had Winnipeg showing their dominance, Toronto displaying dominance. Hamilton before that, not enough to beat Winnipeg. So we've seen Montreal come up with a year of dominance, and then last year they were a bit less dominant, but dominant nonetheless, and then lost to the Argos in the playoff game. So dominance is something that Saskatchewan hasn't shown us yet. This is their best opportunity to do that, and I think this is when they're most prepared to do it. I think they've got the team and the coaching staff to do it, and I think the most important thing, the discipline that they're showing, that's something that when we look at other teams, David, you look at the Argos, you look at Hamilton, you look at every other team, the discipline and the consistency is what makes you a winner and, more importantly, a champ. So, teams like Ottawa, Toronto, and Edmonton's coming out of that. There was a time there where Edmonton's discipline wasn't very good. That's what teams need. They got to be disciplined. And when I say discipline, I don't just mean not taking penalties. I mean taking advantage of opportunities that you create. You got to create opportunities and take advantage of them. It's more than one thing that you have to do. It's the set of things that you do that can make you a winner. And our friends in Saskatchewan, they have a lot to cheer about.
They do. Oh, they definitely do. Like, they haven't just beaten teams; they've dominated teams. Look what they did. I mean, we just talked about with Hamilton. That's a contending team. People saying this is the best that Hamilton's looked at them forever, and Saskatchewan's like, okay, but your best isn't better than our best. Yeah. Even at 75%, I think Saskatchewan still wins that game, even if they're not at their best. Like,
absolutely. Yeah, look, Saskatchewan's been waiting to do this for years. And I got to tell you, fan and team alike, they love the way this season's going and are working really hard to make it as good as they can, because there's one shining reason that's motivating them: winning a Grey Cup in Winnipeg. If you understand Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, they want to win a Grey Cup in Winnipeg. That's what they want to do. And they're set up and primed and ready to do it, because not that Winnipeg's not a good team. They're a great team, but they're teetering. We don't know if they have it to come out of the West. We just don't know that they have it. We know that Saskatchewan's on the verge. And we know that Calgary, they've shown a flicker, so that Western Division is going to be a tough one as the winter rolls in. When the physicality and the running game becomes more important, David, that division is going to become even more interesting, because a brutal running back like Willett in Saskatchewan in the middle of winter in the snow, he's going to be a factor more and more. And the same thing's true with Brady Oliveira. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, no, exactly. That is but that's a big part of where Saskatchewan's really improved. It's not one thing that they've done right that's put them in this position. Their defense is playing well. Their offense, I mean, AJ Willett, he's healthy. That's the key part. He's healthy and he's able to play. And I think probably has something to do with the coach that he has this year too, in Andrew Harris, right? Helping him, take that step as well. So I think it's kind of multifold with just everything that the coaching staff has clearly got this team prepared each and every week. And so I do think that again, I'm waiting to see, is this the 2023 Argos once again, right? Or is this Saskatchewan has really found their groove? And I'm hoping it's B. I don't ever like to see a team that's played well lose it all in one game. But, I mean, that's the mark of a good team. Good teams find a way to win.
Well, those scars can help. You know what I mean? The lessons can be learned. And motivation can be forged. That's what you're hoping, right? That's what you're hoping. If you're a Rider fan, you're hoping the lessons that you've been put through in the past have been learned. You've learned something from them. So good luck to them. It's going to be a great weekend of football, and football that's very meaningful. And for the first time in a few years now, the crossover pressure on the Eastern Division is there. It's there for them to worry about. Is there any final comment you'd like to make about the Canadian Football League this week?
Well, have we talked? We did talk about we did talk about the news last week because it happened just as we got on the air. I
Remind
guess
the
we
folks.
haven't. Pardon?
Remind the folks.
Well, the Argos playing
Their road games,
essentially
their home road
as,
games.
as the fans have explained it to me, selling 3 road games to the opposing team because you're not playing you're playing 3 home games against the host city. Essentially, makes those road games. I truly do understand that. Um, and I think I understand I've always understood the frustrations of fans with this scenario, with this situation. But I always look to say there's multiple things that go into a decision, and it's not just we got more revenue by doing this. It's also the facilities available to them, housing players during the time as well. There's a lot of factors that go into a decision like this. So I don't think this decision was made lightly. I know there's a lot of people are upset that this was the end result, but it's 3 games. It could have been worse. We have seen. I remember back in 2015. You, Frank, remember 2015?
I was a season.
Remember what week the Argos played their first home game at Rogers Center?
9? Is it 9 or 10?
Week 7.
7?
So they played the first 8. Probably there was probably a bye week, and there's somewhere probably eight games on the road before they got to play in their home stadium, and they still got kicked out again. They had to play an October game in Ottawa because the Jays were in the playoffs. So 2015 was tough. I remember how pissed off people were in that time. I understand it. But what needs to be said here is it's not seen as big of a hurdle to those that frankly view the World Cup as a bigger priority. And guys, it is the bigger priority. It's a global event. It's always
a lifetime thing that it won't be back in another 20, 25 years.
You're never ever going to have to deal with something like this again. I would say just take the pain from the one day and then, hope that it's, it leads to better things. I think maybe, yes, there needs to be a conversation.
It really comes down to 2 games, David. It isn't. It's 2 games.
There's a competitive imbalance with it. I get that too. But, I think the real focus and attention should be you're going to be getting some upgrades to the stadium. How do you make sure that those upgrades also bring people in? That I think it should be the attention and not reacting to a situation that you just don't have any control over.
Well, that new area, and I'm going to tell you that it's going to be easier to sell those tickets than it is the ones on the East stands, in the East stands. Will be easier to sell there than they are in the East stands.
Yeah, exactly. The East is a tough. You and I saw that a couple weeks ago. That looked like black, like the hot death.
Really tough stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what, David? It's a once in a lifetime thing. There's an upside to it. There are improvements that are being made to the stadium. What it means is another thing that it means is another opportunity, a bigger opportunity to have a Grey Cup in Toronto. And for those that love football, as well as love their Argos, Grey Cup game will continue the desire and the willingness to have the Grey Cup here in Toronto with that extra.
It would have been nice if 2026 was the year they decided to do that. You already would have had the stands. Just keep the stands for a few more months.
Absolutely.
But I do think a Grey Cup, hopefully Toronto will get one within the next few years.
Yeah, they will. I think it'll be within. Well, we don't know who gets the next one yet.
So we have Winnipeg this year. Calgary is in 2026. 2027. Let me see here. I don't think it's been announced yet. So there's a first opportunity, right? I do think that there's I think maybe Winnipeg gets another one. Does Winnipeg get one? Winnipeg get a Grey Cup, 2 Grey Cups? I don't always like those options, but I think it's just up until 2026. So there's opportunities 2027 and past for this team to host a Grey Cup.
12, 13. They're not showing who the 114th.
No, 112th, 113th, we know for sure.
Yeah, who would you think it would be? Let's see. Well, Vancouver just got theirs.
Vancouver got theirs. Calgary's getting another one because they hosted in 2022.
Montreal doesn't have. They don't want to do it there because it's not really a Grey Cup facility.
No.
Which is what we're talking about with Toronto, right? So as bad as Toronto feels about what they feel, like Toronto fans feel that they at least have a stadium that can host the Grey Cup, and we're talking about being able to host it even better in coming years. There's Edmonton in the mix, and what about Ottawa? Ottawa could be in the mix. It could be Ottawa before Toronto. I think Ottawa, Edmonton, and Toronto the next 3 years that aren't scheduled at this time.
Yeah, I don't.
Right.
Edmonton had one. Was it 2020? No, 2019. Was that the last one in Edmonton?
I believe it was.
The one you went to.
I was there. Yeah, I was there.
Edmonton. We know that there wasn't a league in 2021 was Hamilton. 2022 was Calgary. 2023 was Hamilton. 2024 was BC. This year it's Winnipeg, then it's Calgary. So 2027 is an option if a team wants it.
This work's done in BMO, they'll have it there.
Yeah,
they'll have it there just because of all the extra. They'll be able to sell suites, a nice boatload of suites.
Yeah.
So
we'll see how it goes.
We'll definitely see how it goes. David, it was a slice.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, we got a football game to go to, David. And as an added bonus, the Argos want us to remind you, this is the week that if you buy an Argo ticket, you get to stay in the exhibition all day for free. And if at late at night you want to go watch Blue Rodeo, you can get a 30% discount to watch Blue Rodeo.
Well, I don't know how many tickets are left for that, too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? So, but that's the options, the opportunities you have with buying an Argo ticket. You get free entry into the exhibition all day. So, Thanks for doing this, David.
All right, thank you, Frank.
He's David Morisuti. I'm Candid Frank Sinishi. Thank you for watching, and you can follow me on YouTube, Candid Frank Sinishi, 1030 on YouTube. And David, you can see his way of getting a hold of him on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Thanks for doing this. And thanks for joining us, everybody. Really appreciate you being a part of this. Thank you so much.